tells me he's going to be a scaper tonight. Is that true?
Well, no,
He's going to say, here's not a scaper. Here's a real deal.
a real what?
The real deal.
Hey.
I never got back to you.
Okay.
Your son.
Hello.
You get a formal application in?
I did it online.
Okay.
Whether that counts or not, I'm not sure. But
It should. And Richard sent in an email saying he did it online too.
Yeah.
and so does Shaw.
Did she?
Yeah. Good. She did it a long time ago. Was the problem? Like last year. And so I don't know. I don't know what she did or didn't do. But,
Oh, okay.
but she says she did it back in December.
Yeah,
ought to
that
be
should be
here.
good. That should be good. I don't know.
Is that?
Well, she looked
Did we
in the
hear from
system,
Doug
couldn't
Desmar?
find it.
Uh-huh.
So we'll sort it out.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to call the roll, and then I'm going to go make some copies for the presentation.
okay. Okay. See, are we ready to start?
20 seconds, a minute and 20 seconds. Well, I guess we don't have to go, we can start with that clock, can't we?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Welcome to the Natural Resources Committee of Oregon City, and our first meeting with most of our new crew.
I'll call the roll. Richard Craven and Doug DeHart are absent and excused of that estate. So let's see. Ginger Redlinger, Chair.
Here,
Jerry Herman, Vice Chair.
Here.
Brian Boyce.
Here.
Doug Neely.
Here.
And I'm Pete Walter, Staff Planner, and Tony Conkle is with us tonight, Community Development Director. And
Okay,
we're going to
that's-
make some
that's-
presentation copies, some extra copies for the presentation.
Yeah, just want to make the statement that that appears to be a quorum.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Okay. Second item on the agenda is a message from Mayor Holliday.
And
Yeah,
we
I'm
don't
not-
see Mary Holiday. So
I'm not seeing him, so I'm not sure if he's going to come or not. So,
Okay.
if he does, we'll put him
We'll
up.
come back, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Third item, are we ready to start the presentations, or should we wait till they come back? Ready?
Oh, we can move on, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Come on up.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Matthew Rieg. I am the administrative assistant for Rivers of Life Center Earth Crusaders program, and I've gotten to know Jerry Herman very personally and been very challenged by him. He's a ball of energy, and even at 67, is it? He's
69.
still 69.
And I'm feeling fine.
He is still really pushing me along, and so it's been a fun experience. I'm kind of his IT formatting guy and enjoying it. And I've been able to be a part of some of the past projects with Jerry as well, doing some of the bulbs and the other improvements throughout the Oregon City area. And today what I'll be doing is
Thank you.
presenting just a brief little blip on a project that we're working on and that we submitted to the Oregon Metro recently, yesterday afternoon. And this is one that I am very excited about. I think Jerry is as well. And it's one that he actually worked on about 30 years ago down at this same location, which is on Washington Street near the Home Depot. And about 30 years ago, Jerry helped to improve these wetlands that the Metro, I believe, has jurisdiction over, and really beautify them and improve them. And now, though, there's definitely room for improvement. Jerry and I took a walk recently in that area, I think a couple days ago, and much can be done. The cottonwoods need to be kind of corralled back in. The water quality looked really suspect when we walked around the area, and so we have a concern for that. And so what we would love to do through this project that we're submitting to the Metro is mainly A through H, you'll see on your sheet in regards to the wetland area. And so there are many little steps here, but the general big picture would be to make the area more safe especially for all people of all ages, of all abilities, for seniors especially. There were a lot of routes out of place, and it was very, very inaccessible in a lot of ways when we were walking there. So we want to create safety. We want to get a little more visibility going and just beautify the wetlands in general. And then, in addition, there is a strip of land that is adjacent to the wetlands right along Washington Street that we are considering developing as well, by introducing wildflowers, by probably corralling the blackberries back and creating a more beautiful, engaging environment there as well. And that would provide a really intriguing opportunity for buses and students and visitors from the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, which is very close, to actually swing by this wetland area and receive an education from Jerry's crew, and be able to learn about recycling and about the wetland area. And so those are the main two areas of improvement that we're considering and we've submitted to Metro, and we're very excited about. And really, between that is the sum of the project that we're looking at. And it's really threefold. It's the wetland enhancement, the gateway area enhancement, and the tour opportunity that we have. And I think you'll see a tour little draft sheet that we have in the packet as well that gives you a brief blip on what this could look like with bringing in visitors from the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center to this area. So very intriguing opportunity there. And we do have many partners who back us. I believe you'll see those partners listed as well. And so feel free to take a look at that. The end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, of course, is with us. That is basically the first concern that we would have, is to get them on our side. And they're definitely with us, supporting us. And they have up to 200 busloads of students per year. So this could explode in a lot of ways and really benefit Oregon City in education and expand the area a little bit. The city of Oregon City thankfully supports us as well. So we appreciate that. The Natural Resources Committee, Metro as well is on our side in the Recycling and Waste Department. The senior engineers and Parks Environmental Services staff with Metro, so Robin Smoot and Bruce Philbrick as well. And the Clackamas Community College and Environmental Learning Center, which Jerry, I believe, worked at many years ago, also backs this, along with the Oregon City School District. And so many different partners here who are saying, yes, we would love to promote this idea. And really all that I am here today to accomplish is asking all of you if you would consider drafting a letter of support for this project that we could send along to Metro in the next month or so. And I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
It looks like the area you're talking about, it doesn't affect the Clackamas landscape business that's there at all.
It's outside of their property.
Well,
Right.
that's city property, but in any case, it doesn't affect theirs at all. And it looks like you're looking at an area on the Washington Street side of the tracks.
Yes, so it would be more northern, so across from Home Depot,
Right.
right next to the recycling center.
And so the project actually goes up to Union Pacific's railroad tracks, is that right?
I think it comes right up adjoining to it. Yeah, I think that would be in the back. It's not very noticeable, thankfully, so it's still kind of a haven of beauty in the midst of the tracks in the recycling center, which makes it pretty unique and attractive. So, yeah.
And just to address a piece of sensitivity, you're sending it to the Oregon City Enhancement Boards. It's not Metro run. The funding comes from Metro, but it's Oregon City that you're submitting it to, not Metro.
Well, actually,
Or are you going for a
This
different
is
set of
a
money?
nature in the neighborhoods.
Oh.
Resource conservation and
Oh, so
education
it is going
grant
to Metro.
submittal. Yes.
Oh.
And it was actually due on Tuesday of this week, the concept, at least look at the concept, pre-application, and they will then
Oh, okay.
either move it forward or not. And there's a second opportunity in April to take it to them under a different type of grant program that they have.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, I'm not saying that we wouldn't perhaps come back to Metro enhancement in May if there's not enough leeway to make this happen. We were requesting $25,000 from Metro, which is the maximum you can request unless you have an even broader multi-year project. And so I'm answering some of the details that he knows, but the essence of the whole thing is the involvement would be Oregon City School District, Junior ROTC program, and others, and then build upon the theme of Oregon Trail. People are coming down nearby anyway. This area has not looked very attractive for a long time, and there's a debris field that John Lewis asked us to clean up between, as you said, Clackamas Landscape Supply and the Metro entry. So we're really trying to solve the issues of circulation and traffic. It's a very dangerous area to go into right now. Boulders sitting there and all that. So we took it to John Lewis, Pete Walters, and others about a week ago for their review, especially the Oregon City property.
So in Boulders and Scree, does that imply it's a lizard habitat?
Well,
Not that we
They're
could
escaping.
tell. There's potential for that, but not that we saw.
well, the issue is the boulders can be rearranged with the heavy equipment that John's going to provide, and then the scree is all the demolition, shattered rock that's down there is just exactly what wildfire's like. And if you do some grading and add a few amendments to it, but not a lot, because you want it to be somewhat semi-sterile in nature, that's what wildfire's like, and then the grasses won't get established in among it. So we have Screeville, this mess, and Boulderville to be rearranged into the mounds and such that you see there, and he's going to provide John Lewis and Company all the fill materials, mulches, and things like that. Quite a few, probably close to $10,000 or $15,000 worth of in kind, because he'd like to see it get cleaned up.
Very good.
Do we have enough information to support writing a letter, or do we have any concerns?
I wanted to, they touched on it briefly, is the water quality there. It really has too little water flowing through it, but it doesn't dry out. And what happens with that sort of habitat is if any ducks who are attracted to it produce young, the young generally die because there's too much bacteria and fungus in the water. But I think it's beyond the scope of your project to fix that issue. It would require some sort of water source, which, you know, there is a couple of creek drainage ways in the area, but they don't run in the summer when, you know, right when you need the water quality for the birds, if they're going to reproduce there. And it does get, you know, I have dogs, they've gotten in that water, it does get smelly in the summer. I don't go there in the summer anymore for that very reason with those dogs. It's okay in the winter when there's actually water coming into it. There is water nearby that theoretically could be piped there. I don't know if it would be cost effective to do that, but I don't think there's enough nearby would do the job year round either. So there's no simple solution, but just wanted to make that aware. And like I say, I think it's beyond the scope of this project to tackle that, but you did mention it, so. Okay.
Yeah. I think, and that's a great point. I think maybe at some level we could ponder making some improvements, maybe not to the scope of creating a duck environment, but yeah, I appreciate that for sure. And you were very valid in what you said there.
Yeah.
The history of the site, he doesn't know the history like I do, but the history of the site was in 1982 when the facility opened. Ron Tom was mayor then. Ron came down to say that we solved the solid waste problem. They just had a big barbecue across the street where the methane was being burned off and reminded everybody they had just eaten hot dogs and beans. And that fit the methane digester that was nearby, next door, where they were flaring things off, and that all the waste was leaving Oregon City to be dealt with. And we didn't have to deal with it at Rossman's landfill anymore. That's the history. There was a site federally mandated mitigation wetland that had to be built there for the stormwater runoff. That was the site that is now called the Metro South Wetland. Every year for the next 3 years, I watched them go down with bulldozers and run cats through it to scrape out all the cattails. Now, I can tell you cattails are worth $5 a pot, meaning 2 to a pot, you figure it out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cattails were being removed because they thought they needed to keep it open. And that was, so I came into the scene at that time, and your city chamber was looking at trying to improve the North Gateway. So we spent 6 months fooling around with a landscape plan that was 10 feet long, and we included that area in it. And a lot of it ended up happening, I'll have to say, along the boulevards of Washington Street, plus your staff have had other improvements that have been made too, such as the landscape next to the landscape supply folks. But so it's been a very misunderstood area, and I'll be honest with you, I would like to see it look better because it's a gateway to the city, and I'd like to see the debris field, like John does, put into some good use, and then ultimately here's an educational opportunity unduplicatable, where you've got already thousands of kids coming down to the end of the Oregon Trail that could, those who wanted to, effectively, cost-effectively move buses to another location with the school districts, multiple districts' blessings, and have a conservation and cultural history experience. Cultural history at one site, conservation at the other. So, anyway.
Okay.
I'll make my first motion, if I might, as a member, and
Okay.
say that move to write a letter of support for this project.
I would second that.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Jerry, are you an
Aye.
applicant?
Aye.
You're the applicant, aren't you?
Oh, you can't vote.
We're the applicant. I'm not voting.
Okay.
Well, let's see,
I'm
that
just nodding.
Hold
gives
on a
us a curious situation
Thank you,
where
Tony.
we only have 3 members present, which is one
okay.
less than a quorum for
Right.
this issue alone. Is that
Members present, I believe.
members present?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Members present.
Well, with that said, the motion passes.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your work, Jerry.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you for all your work.
Thanks, Matthew. If you need any help.
Thank you for all of your efforts with the
He,
city.
he did not tell you, but he's responsible with about 5 other people for replanting all the downtown tree wells and planting the thousands of bulbs that have bloomed. I won't say it's all worked out the way I'd like, but
Matthew.
we're continuing to add new things.
Please spell your last name.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
GG.
Is approval of the
Okay.
minutes, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, approval of the minutes. Want to take a look to review those? September minutes, is that correct?
Yeah, let's see. You have,
Okay.
September 10th, 2014.
Initial review, I didn't see any changes to recommend.
Yeah. I looked at it earlier. Okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next
All right.
item is if members wish to make any changes to the agenda, they can move them on to new business items with the
I
consensus.
guess I have a question
Mm-hmm.
of Pete here, and maybe Tony too. We were advised that we should prepare something to give to the retreat folks, whenever that came up. It's coming up, I guess, on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. Is that what I hear?
23rd, 24th, I
And I think we have the essence of that put together.
I
thought
believe
that
we
was-
passed that last time.
Thought that was
didn't we?
finalized.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
already
we
been
did.
forwarded
At
along.
last
approved it.
meeting.
So my question, I guess, is do we want to somehow try to present it? I mean, David came up to me after my comment at the first meeting of Mayor Holliday, David Frazier, and said, I'd be glad to present it for you. I mean, I don't know what you folks want to do. I just feel like we should have a opportunity to get it into the record or into the process.
It'll be part of the packet, so they will have it to review.
They would have.
Yep. It's really, I think as the discussion went with the city commission when that was brought up, there's not a public comment period for that work session, and in the goal settings, it's the commissioners, but it's at their discretion. I mean, sometimes historically we've let it happen, but I can't speak for the new commission as to how they're going to proceed. So it's in the record. We've provided it, and we're ready to talk about it if they have questions.
Would you be willing to present in our behalf? I mean, I've come to those meetings in the past, and you've got a lot of stuff you're covering. And I'm not going to stay there for 2 days or a day and a half. I just don't have the time, unfortunately. I wish I could, but not knowing but I learned a lot. So I guess the question would be, if there was an opportune time, or could you make an opportune time to let them know that it is there, and please review it?
Well, they'll have it.
Okay.
They will be part of their packet.
Okay.
Yep. It'll be something that they work through.
Okay.
I don't think this is the only board that made a presentation. One of the other boards actually presented to the previous commission some goals that they wanted to see progress. I don't know if that was the Park and Recreation Committee. I think it was. So, and I presume that's in the packet too.
Well, this was a little different. These weren't goals necessarily. These were recommendations for example, a volunteer coordinator should be considered. Additional funding for Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. Inclusion of the natural resource if there are code amendments to things such as dark skies, natural resource, geologic hazards. So it was different than the goals that have been set. These were more recommendations and considerations for the city commission.
From here, then.
I'm sorry?
From here?
Yes.
I don't know the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council would probably like more financial support, but I don't know if they've ever requested it. It's a different body.
I understand. Yeah, it was a recommendation
I get,
put forward.
I'm on that board, and I don't remember anybody coming to us and asking if we want to put that in there.
I believe it was one of the recommendations Richard made in our work,
Oh.
in our goals.
To encourage more
challenged it at
collaboration.
the last meeting, saying I don't think we can be quite that specific to them, although we support them, we do.
Yeah.
But it needs to be more general. That perhaps there are other,
Okay.
Yeah,
but I guess my real question, I don't know, Brian, does anybody want to try to attend the meeting and just be there?
Well, I would suggest talking with the new mayor and seeing how he's wanting to handle this meeting to see if that would be appropriate and so on. Because I'm sure he'll be glad to at least talk with us ahead of time, if not actually have us present. But
In the past, the facilitator has opened up a bit to the public at different periods, but it is not a open meeting in that
Right.
sense at all.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Uh,
Usually standing room only, so get there early.
Well, I might try to attend one time. Maybe we could
You know
take-
what I would highly recommend. So we're trying to button up the agenda by Friday, and so the retreat is Friday and Saturday of the next week. I would contact Katie Riggs or maybe contact Pete, and we can get a copy of the agenda because I'm not sure where things are going to be falling out. I can't even tell you which day it might be on, if it's going to be Friday or Saturday at this point, until that agenda's completed. And that we're trying to complete that tomorrow into Friday. So just to at least give you an idea, it's probably going to be Saturday, I would imagine.
Okay.
But that's just a guess at this point.
Yeah. I just think if there's an opportunity to show the flag, not necessarily speak, it'd
Yeah.
be wise for us to do that. So, but I'd be willing to take a slot of time if other people on the committee were willing to. I'm just talking concept here.
It won't be around on the 24th.
Shall we just maybe look and see
Yeah,
Yeah.
what the agenda looks like, if it will even be possible?
I would talk with either Katie Riggs or the new mayor.
Doesn't it start about 8 or something on Saturday?
I believe it is 8 to 4 or something like that.
8 to 4. I mean, I'd be willing to go 8 until 11 myself, as an example. I probably need to do other things thereafter, but
I have a science fair at my school on the 23rd, so I don't think I'll be able to make that.
that's Saturday.
Friday. The morning of the 24th, I'm available.
Yeah. I think Tony's right. Probably more likely there's more opportunity on Saturday than there is on Friday, right?
This is my guess based on how the other ones have gone.
because Friday's a half-day thing. It's an evening thing only, evening thing.
So should we check in with Pete and see if there's a
I'd
possibility?
recommend that. Maybe we can
to
follow
come
up on Monday or Tuesday.
in? Yeah, okay.
Okay, very wonderful. Anyway, I'm willing to look at an early morning thing from 8 until whatever, because, because I have time then. I wouldn't have time in the afternoon, but,
Okay. Maybe we can coordinate.
Sure.
All right.
okay.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, citizen comments. We have Bob. Hi, Bob.
I'm just visiting.
All right. He's made his comment, so we'll move on then to new business discussion items.
All right. So I'm going to provide a overhead projector of a project in a little bit here, so I'm going to have to get this up and running. But in the meantime, while the computer is booting up, I'll give you a little background. So the way that the Oregon City's municipal code works, we have zoning code, and we have overlay zones within our zoning code, which kind of hover over sections of the city. We have, and the Natural Resources Overlay District is one of the adopted overlay districts, and it is intended to protect and enhance natural resources in the city. It functions as a development review code. It is not solely supposed to function that way, but that's the way that the text of the code is written. So when new development of any kind is proposed, it is reviewed as a use within that overlay zone, or it is exempt from that overlay zone, depending on what kind of project it is, such as the Metro South Enhancement Project. Is it a permitted use without any review requirement in the Natural Resources Overlay District, provided it's a city-approved project? And so that's an example of an exempt use within the overlay. And then you have other types of uses within that overlay district, which is basically any development proposal within that overlay, whether it's residential or commercial. And it also includes such things as bridges, public works, et cetera, anything that is going to create new impervious surface area or disturbance. And the requirement for the Natural Resources Overlay District comes out of Metro Regional Code. The habitat requirements and Title III water quality requirements that are in Title III and Title 13 of the Metro Regional Code. And Oregon City is in compliance with both Title III and 13. And so if you're looking as a developer or a home builder or any member of the public at a property in Oregon City, you can easily use our GIS system to see whether or not that overlay district exists on your property. And then you would want to approach staff and ask questions to see how it actually affects your property in terms of development or enhancement, as the case may be. So, get this rolling.
We'll be able to see this on the computer.
Yeah, what I wanted to show you was the Danielson's redevelopment example. And that was a good example because you'll see in a little bit here, the wetland that runs along between Beaver Creek Road and the movie theater there was essentially channelized and a little bit rediverted when Beaver Creek Road was realigned to tee into Malala Avenue. Subsequently, it was functioning like a wetland, but it also functions as a stormwater channel. And when Safeway was redeveloped where the Danielson store was, a Natural Resources Overlay District application was required to be submitted as well. So I was going to use that as an example. And these applications require, they're required to be prepared by a professional natural resources specialist and someone who's either a wetland biologist, a wetland specialist, or someone with training in natural resources. Most of the time, those applications are prepared by wetland specialists, and because there's frequently a wetland complex in association with the streams that we have. Bring up, this one's good because we actually have some photos, because Danielson's been doing a great job of monitoring the progress of the restoration area every year to show what's been going on. And I'll do that.
Hey, Jerry, you can toggle your screen on the bottom left on there.
Bottom left?
And it'll just.
Which one?
Yeah, push
Show me.
this over to the left.
Oh, the toggle. Got it.
That thing that's hiding.
Push
Thank
it
you.
the other way. So it
Sorry.
says presentation.
My eyes are shot tonight.
There we go.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you should.
Can you guys?
So they're actually doing the monitoring, Danielson's are?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Or
we have
the-
this on our
Yeah, it's a
Good.
requirement of the code to do annual monitoring and send
Yeah,
a report.
okay. Glad to hear it.
And so we started in 2011. They've been sending us base photos every year. But what they actually submitted for review by the Planning Commission and staff were a detailed wetland report. In this case, it was prepared by Environmental Science and Assessment, excuse me. And it includes a narrative and then a series of maps. So they went in and using Corps of Engineers methodology, looked at the channel, looked at the vegetation, looked at the soil conditions. And then they discussed the existing conditions and then how their proposal is going to impact the required vegetated corridor. So in this case, there's a better map in here. This is a graphic that shows the outline of the, this is the movie theater. The ditch comes in behind the movie theater. It's fed by a wetland complex above it. They're mapping the boundary of the vegetated corridor that would be in place. And then they go into more detail and show the extent of the high water mark. And then what they were proposing in this case is to encroach into the vegetated corridor slightly with a parking lot improvement. And so the area in this case that's shown as mitigation area to offset that encroachment was what they did their calculation on in square foot. And they come up with a total amount of square feet, and then they plant that area based on planting requirements in the code.
So if I might,
yeah.
that expansion went before the planning commission, is that right?
Yeah, in this
Before-
case it did.
Yeah.
Normally, if it would be a type 2, but in this case there was a master plan going on for the entire site, so the planning commission saw this.
And this corridor, water corridor, was historically known as Dave Fish Creek. Is that not true? Remember Dave?
I
some of
did
you?
not know that.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
A long time ago.
So these are photos from
Yeah.
the application, so these are early photos from 2010 showing the existing parking lot and sidewalk, which had been maintained by the property owner and also by Oregon City Public Works as well, functioning as a slow-moving stormwater ditch with wetland plants in the bottom. And occasionally it would get clogged from time to time and needed to be cleared out in a sensitive way. And then what they did,
Those grills you just showed.
Yeah,
Can you go back to
sorry.
that for a second?
yeah,
It was about, I think, about 5 years ago. There was a huge freeze-up, and ice built up upstream,
yeah,
and then began to move
mm-hmm.
and build up right against that, and it overtopped Beaver Creek Road and flooded that whole area.
Right, right.
It's pretty
So-
amazing.
And I think that emphasizes the challenge that some of these areas have, because they are functioning as sensitive natural resources with a stormwater component, which potentially could flood if if it got choked with debris. And so you'll see this throughout the city. Depending on the size of the drainage, it can be quite a challenge. And John Lewis and his crews try to balance the need for, keeping stormwater moving with maintaining the vegetation that's in there, that's native. And so that is a challenge. And then I'll show you these are some of the baseline photos that were sent after the planting. Maybe that'll come up. Shows the silt fence, so they hadn't actually, gotten anything growing yet. This is from the west looking east, I think, or east looking west. And then I think the most recent set of photos is probably a good one to show. See, they kept the same photo points. You can really see how those maples and shrubs are coming in nicely. So they'll have one more year of monitoring maintenance to do. They have not lost a lot of material at all, which is good, because they have to show that they've got 80% establishment at the end of 5 years, and replace the plants accordingly to meet that minimum. And in this case, they lost very few. I like to use these guys as an example of how property owners really take ownership of the drainage on their property. So in this case, so they've got their plant count and survival from 2011 through 2014, and as you can see, they've got 110 plants.
The zeros mean they haven't counted them yet, right?
They haven't counted those yet. We've got one more year to do.
It's about a year.
And these are the species that were planted in there. Trees are big leaf maple, bitter cherry, Oregon white oak for 49 trees, various types of native shrubs. And I think the ground cover is a native type of prairie mix that they've got underneath that. So it's good. Upstream of there's a wetland and a drainage which also needs some enhancement, and potentially would be a good spot for interpretation. I know Nancy Crawshire had looked at trying to do some more work in trails, to get trails in there and show people what a good project can look like. So there's definitely plenty of opportunities to do this. That kind of explains how certain developments are get approved through the natural resources process, but I think, as you're all aware, we have areas within our natural resources overlay district which kind of are in a state of benign neglect, I think was the term someone used in a previous meeting. And so there's another component to this, which is, incentivizing people and getting volunteers out into these areas to help them to clear out some of the invasives and do replanting projects. Abernethy Creek's a great example of that, and you're all aware of plenty of others. This code that we're under now is updated in 2010, and we haven't done any amendments to it since. I think we're getting a little better at using the mapping program, and the public in general is able to see, how these overlays function on their property as well. But the component that I think we really need to concentrate on is the incentive side of it and education side of it. And I know that one of the work plan components that the Natural Resources Committee has adopted is to create educational materials to educate homeowners who live near and in these areas about what's there. Any questions about this?
Well, I went to the Planning Commission. This is a new expansion of the parking area. Is that right?
Yeah, it was there was a parking area. It was head-in parking. It was just a flat curb, and they meandered it slightly, created a drive aisle instead of the parking, and relocated the parking. But meandering that drive aisle along the edge expanded it slightly into the buffer in certain areas.
Was the buffer area actually planted already?
Not really. It was in sort of degraded state.
So
Yeah.
so areas that their meander doesn't go through are areas that are going to be the mitigation areas. So are there going to be replantings there too?
The
There are plantings there, I should say.
Well, I think what they've done is, what's shown in those photos is the mitigation area, but
Yeah.
beyond that, they weren't going to do any further planting under the ordinary high water mark because of Public Works had already planted some stuff in there. I'm not sure I'm answering your question correctly.
Okay, I guess,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
are they taking out any areas of the, there's a buffer, and I presume they're moving into that buffer, and that's why they've got a mitigation area.
Right, exactly. And it's a 2-to-1.
Are they
ratio.
removing vegetative material that either they or Public Works put in there, and are they going to actually do some replanting if that was done?
Well, everything that they created as impact area, they had to double their mitigation area is twice the amount of impact area. And so they had to replant an area that was degraded
Okay. So that's
twice
part of the
as
mitigation effort.
much. Yeah,
Yeah, that was part
yeah,
of the, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
You were using this as an example of a natural resource overlay district for us to view as a...
As a in a development application. Yeah.
We used to maintain that landscape up there for 10 years,
Mhm.
and I was very distressed to see 48 trees have to be removed. I mean, 8 to 10 inch crimson king maples and others that I guess couldn't be designed around. How did that mitigation get solved? I
Whereabouts?
can't remember what your requirements are. I mean, you had a 20-inch, a lot of 20-inch trees up there, 48 some trees, I remember.
Okay.
Um,
If those were outside of the natural resources,
Outside, yes.
yeah, that's different. That's governed by a different part of the code, the tree protection part of the code, with a different schedule for replanting. So that's the upland question that people have concerns about. It's not subject to the same code as the Natural Resource Overlay District. It's subject to tree removal and mitigation under the, if it's within a construction area, there's one level of mitigation if the tree's removed, and if it's outside of the construction area and could reasonably be avoided and you still remove it, then you have to plant more trees. So it realistically is a
Would it have
it's a
been 1 to 1
replanting
or 3 to 1?
requirement,
or
not a preservation requirement. Yeah.
Would it have been 1 to 1 replacement or 3 to 1 or? Do you know?
I'll show you,
Okay.
since we're on that.
Guess I have to switch back.
Because we're not reviewing that part of the code tonight, that's why I
Sure.
didn't. Yeah,
It's all right, just kind of.
yeah.
We did save a lot of plant material, and Bob was just talking to me about, we're doing some work at, under a Metro Enhancement Grant for the entry of Forsyth to Clackamas River Drive, near where Brian lives, and there are Danielson trees down there. They're everywhere. We moved a lot of material and saved it, but some of the things were just impossible. Craig was good about that, but
Well, that is the challenge.
the changes that were being made to the whole site were so huge. I get the picture. It was very difficult, you know.
So under this code, here's the table that applies. Depending on the size of the tree removed, the trees in column 1 if they're moved outside of the construction area, you're required to plant 3 2-inch caliper trees. And if it's within a construction area, it's 1 for 1. But as you increase in the diameter of the tree that's removed, the mitigation requirements go up. And
They don't necessarily have to plant in that location. I mean, you can go into other areas.
they can plant in other areas if it makes sense, and you can't fit all the trees on that site. And that is frequently the case. We also allow fee in lieu of planting, and that goes into a tree fund that we have, which can be used to leverage planting citywide. But we try to prioritize planting on site to the extent that we can. And to be honest, it's pretty hard to find places to replant. By the time we've included all of the landscaping requirements, which already have tree planting requirements and that sort of thing, we frequently have to find off-site planting areas or take fee in lieu, especially in our residential subdivisions. So what this code also does is create flexibility for developments to use smaller setbacks and smaller lot sizes as well in order to create trees. That's a carrot kind of thing, but there really isn't a whip in this code that says you must create this tree, this place for this tree. And that was done consciously when the Planning Commission and City Commission adopted this new code because of the difficulty of, developing a site when you've got grading requirements and public infrastructure going in, sewer, water lines, and utility lines. I think the stakes get higher the bigger the tree is. So we've got a lot of heritage-type trees that could be eligible for, heritage classification if the owners chose to do that. Certainly, Icon and some of our residential developers try as much as they can to preserve trees on site, but there's definitely a market incentive not to do that when you've got so much invested in development. So it is a challenge. And we do try to look at some of the newer codes that have been adopted by other cities. The most recent one, I think, that's been discussed a lot is the City of Tigard's code, which was developed after a process of about 7 years after they developed a urban tree canopy approach to tree management, where they're like, well, we know we can't save every tree that we want to, but we do want to set a target for tree canopy citywide and create incentives to do that. And so far, I believe they've been very successful, and it was a process that was supported by everyone involved.
Regarding off-site, if you had to, as you suggested,
Yeah.
do you have a banking area where you're trying to do off-site? I mean, a strategy that you have identified for?
Public Works has shading priority areas because of stormwater requirements. Some of those are on private land and some of them are on public property. So we really need the consent of private landowners in order to achieve maximum planting of those areas. But definitely to the extent that we can prioritize planting on public land, we are doing that. We're also doing that through the tree program that city manager has put into place for the last few years to plant on public land as well. But in terms of using the tree mitigation bank as a leveraging fund for tree planting, we're hoping to do that this year. I was going to talk about that later with the Arbor Day discussion, but through a project with Friends of Trees, where we can leverage that money and plant right of way and choose willing neighborhoods to do that in as a pilot project this year in the fall.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I noticed that you've included in the packet the overlay, DNR.
Code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to recommend that we read that over the next month, and if we have
Okay.
would like to talk about it, we'll put it into old business for next month's agenda.
And that's on the city website, I believe.
Yeah, it's on this municipal code website, and I included the text version for your packets.
Okay.
Okay, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda, update on Clackamas Park boat ramp.
So according to Scott Archer, they've received, I believe, $40,000 to study the boat ramp.
How much?
40,000.
I thought it was 100,000.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
We're broke.
Recently,
It's a
or-
big difference.
Fairly recently.
Okay.
So that's as much as I know. They're
Okay.
going to, yeah, move forward with that study. Do you have any questions that I can get back to him on?
Yeah, he was,
Mm.
he got back to me when I left him a couple messages. I was the one that brought this up last month because
Right.
I feel like there's a dynamic going on off that boat ramp, and it ain't the boat ramp's total fault, but the boat ramp now touches huge new point bar that comes out from Doll Beach. And the boat ramp is very strong and does not let the river scour. And the river below the boat ramp is scouring a trough, or was up until this last flood. I don't know what it looks like right now. But above the boat ramp, it's actually impinging and storing gravel. And so everything's shallowing from the bridge to the boat ramp. Then we have from the bridge up to Clackamas Cove, the requirements of the developers are still, I believe, to dredge at some point. So the question would be, if you do have the boat ramp in the future at Clackamas Park and maybe align it in a new way so it would work better, you almost have enough critical mass there to maintain a channel, at least the idea, with certain agencies that would never give you a permit. There is a permit in place for above the bridge to the entrance of Clackamas Cove. And that work, I think the developers will want to do if and when they start moving forward at some point. But so the question was, in my mind, can we encourage the study to look at everything below the bridge, not just the boat ramp, because it's the holistic view that Richard thinks is very important. Richard Craven, I agree with him. There's been a holistic view done above the bridge, but not below. Anyway, Scott was very good about that and said, I will include you guys, meaning myself or anybody else from this committee, when we start into the study with the water guy or lady, what is the name of that person? Hydrology study, yeah. So,
Any other comments from the?
I guess the question is part of it to see not only the feasibility of doing something else there, but whether you're going to have a boat ramp or not, or has that been established that we're going to be able to have a boat ramp reestablished there?
That's what that study's all about, is to decide that issue, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so $30,000 might be enough to decide whether that boat ramp should even be reconstructed, and if so, then you'll probably need more money.
Yeah,
oh yes.
it's a complicated location, you know. We've got the city has a photo from the 30s before the dredging of the Willamette and Clackamas started and the gravel removal, to the extent that it opened up that to boat traffic. But before that, it was pretty darn shallow. But with the deeper Willamette, whether or not that's going to happen again to the same extent is open to question. But it is where the tides come to, right about the mouth of the Clackamas Cove, and consequently there's a huge amount of gravel building up to the point where that earlier permit may not be adequate to keep that open to, especially to boat traffic. And exactly to what state that's going to happen. We do know more gravel is going to be placed in the river, but it's going to take who knows how long for it to reach that area. But it will have some impact when it does, we think. But so it's a really funny area. There was some interest shown earlier in working on the Oregon City side like is going to happen in Gladstone this year. But there's issues there. There's issues about regulations related to planting a riprap area, which the whole Oregon City side is, or at least almost all of it, and all the way down to the mouth. And that has to be resolved. And so there's all these other issues that nobody's sure about. But the start of it has to be, what is going to happen with the boat ramp. Yeah, and then the rest of the decisions will or will not happen after that, depending on what that decision is. So,
Okay,
anyway.
we have a request for public comment on this agenda item, so Bob, why don't you come up and
Okay,
talk?
good deal.
Sure, your mic's on, Bob, if you could.
And you have 3 minutes, but we might give you another minute.
My name is Bob LaSalle. I live here in Oregon City. And in regard to the boat ramp, I gave this a little more thought, and this is really not the committee to approach this about, but you might think when you're talking to your friends on the Parks and Recreation to, if that ever opens again, institute a boat ramp fee. There are hardly any boat ramps anywhere that don't require some kind of a fee. And it would be something that would generate actually quite a little bit of money, because if you've ever been at that boat ramp and seeing the boats going in there, both in the winter and the summer, it gets pretty exciting. It's kind of fun to watch a man and wife try to get their boat launched in there sometimes. It's almost like watching a movie. So, and then also, after listening to Jerry and Brian speak, that whole issue could possibly affect my fishing in that area. So that's a pretty serious consideration also.
Good point. Good
Thank
point.
you.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Bob, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, can we ask Scott for an update next month?
Will.
Can you double check that number? I could have sworn it was 100,000.
I will.
100,000, a whole lot more. You can do a lot more hydrology if that's the case. When you really look at the whole lower section there holistically. And then I'm going to raise one other issue right now. I don't know what the channel off the Clackamas looks like, but I want to just put this one out there for you. When the Portland Spirits vessel, Willamette Star, which is the second biggest vessel that they have, came by in October the 14th for the first demo cruise to Oregon City. There'll be 10 more starting in May, June, and July this next year, or June, July, and August. It was lowest water, and it was high tide. And I told them, you must get the best captain here. And they thought I was getting a little pushy about it, because that area really concerns me. And so they weren't going to put their best captain on the boat. And I said, out of the grant, I'll pay, or with my own money, to have your best captain on that boat. It was going to cost about $100 to have him on the boat, which is not much money. The best captain that knows that area. And so they finally put him on there, and I think they thought I was going overboard. They came by, docked at John Storm Park, and reported to me. The general manager called me and said, Jerry, there's nothing to worry about. We have 7 feet of water underneath the keel here at John Storm Park. I said, that's not the concern. What did you have when you came by the Clackamas, where all this stuff's coming out? And he called me back a little later. He said, we had 3.5 feet of water under the keel. And I said, what was today's tide? He says, I don't know. It was 3 feet. You get the picture here? So the channel is so important there for future tourism, I believe, to Oregon City, that anything we can do to look at the holistic part from the bridge down, it's already been done above the bridge, and then work out a strategy.
Yeah.
Tourism with bigger vessels, jet boats, fine, but bigger draft vessels,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what the Army Corps originally dredged that to back in the 30s, in the
True.
1930s. I have no idea what the figure is, but it was designed to handle shipping. That's for
Been
sure.
there for a long time. It's done really quite well for a long
That
time.
might be a question we forward to Scott as he's putting his plan together.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know, because if it was dredged to 10 feet and now it's much less, then that would be of interest.
Okay. Okay, looks like we're ready to move on to the next item. Metro South Enhancement Plan, are we going to look at that again?
I don't know how that
Okay,
attachment made its way onto the item, but
all right,
these things happen.
okay.
The next item is the Arbor Week.
Arbor Week,
Yeah.
okay, there we go.
So, being as it's the beginning of the spring term, the school district has got other priorities at the moment, but we are working with them closely to firm up a date for an Arbor Day event that we'd really like to be like no other. And the school district has indicated that they would like to hold this at Eastham Community Center. So I think what we're hoping to do with this is involve Friends of Trees. This suggestion actually came from Friends of Trees, was to hold the Arbor Day celebration, and they would be there as well. We'd like to involve the McLaughlin and the Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Associations and invite as many people as we can to this event. We're not sure whether it would be a weekend or a weekday at this point. We've got 4 time slots potentially with Friends of Trees for late April. So it would not be the first week of April, which is Oregon Arbor Week, but it would be Oregon City Arbor Day. And we'll have once we know the date, we'll be able to move forward a little better. The idea with this Arbor Day celebration is that we really drum up some neighborhood interest in a planting program in the fall, which Friends of Trees would administer and set up and train local volunteers to carry out. It's kind of, I know this has been done in the past, and we'd like to bring the tradition back. Friends of Trees is looking at expanding beyond their traditional area within Portland and moving into outreach areas like Oregon City. And we've got matching funds and interest to do it. So we do have a lot of neighborhoods where trees have been removed from the right-of-way over the years. And now we're able to identify some of these areas and combine that knowledge with neighborhood outreach so that we actually get willing abutting property owners. And I think that is the key to a successful project. So we're looking forward to that, and we would welcome any advice or ideas you guys have on how to make that event as successful as it can be.
Why would it be staged at Eastham? I didn't understand that.
Well, the reason that we decided Eastham would be a good location, thank you, was because it's equidistant between Berkeley Hills and McLaughlin Neighborhood Associations. Okay. It's got room to plant some trees. It's a great location for the kids. And I think the timing of the event would be such that, it's a fairly easy spot to find. It's central. That was the reason. There are some potential other locations. I know we've talked about doing something at Holcomb Elementary as well on the field behind there, and continuing planting at McLaughlin Elementary School as well. But I think we are trying to focus on one event and make it a successful event. We do have to bear in mind that Earth Day is around when is Earth Day? It's 19th. So we will need to work around that and make sure that we're not conflicting with the Clackamas Cove planting and cleanup as well.
Earth Day is always the 22nd. It's my birthday.
So, okay.
That's your birthday?
Good for you. Your birthday. Good deal. So that would be the citywide cleanup day, the 22nd?
I don't know any of the details for citywide cleanup yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is that your birthday on a Saturday?
I hope so. It's always more fun.
Because citywide cleanup is organized through code enforcement and parks. So,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, rats. My birthday's on a Wednesday.
About
okay.
5 or 6 years ago, some volunteers planted at Eastham some fruit trees. And I don't know how they did.
Yeah.
But if
Yep.
they
They did
did well,
okay.
you want to perhaps avoid planting trees that are going to shade those
And to
out.
shade those out,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Well, the next step for us would be to get with the school district, Mike Reisling, and choose the locations in advance,
Mhm.
and then see what else we can do. The time between April and when the Friends of Trees project would actually start gives us a significant amount of time to really send out some flyers. And Friends of Trees does a lot of their outreach through mailing, and then when people are signed up, they go to a web-based format. So you can basically buy your tree online, and then depending on what type of program we agree to with Friends of Trees, they will either have volunteers come out and plant the trees, or the property owner can plant the tree themselves. So,
Might
Yeah.
mention that Friends of Trees were active in the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association probably about 15 more years ago, and a lot of the trees in the parking strips, there were person could pay $10, and Friends of Trees made up the difference, and PGE actually bore the holes for those trees to go into. So that was a volunteer effort a few years back.
yeah.
So we've had them here. They have worked outside the Portland area before.
That's good to know. What we're going to do for Friends of Trees is basically send them an overhead aerial map with planting areas, and then we would drill down and ground truth that. And then by the time the fall rolls around, they'll actually have marked and located where exactly the trees are going to be planted on the day. So we're kind of going from the aerial big picture view down to ground level. I think Friends of Trees said that it would be a very successful project if they were able to plant 40 to 50 street trees. And so I'm hoping that we can easily meet that. Yeah.
Are they, or is the project willing to take on non-street tree planting? as well?
Yes, yeah. If somebody says they would prefer a tree in their yard, they will do that. And we kind of have to, what we need to do as staff is help them with some of the mailings and some of the interest in whether they want a street tree or front yard tree or backyard tree, and send that along. So that's what we'll be doing next, doing a mail out to the neighborhood associations. And if hopefully we can get these neighborhood associations to get into a friendly rivalry. That would, yeah.
So you were suggesting that we might want to somehow participate, at least I thought I heard you say that.
Well,
are there
I-
opportunities to have a booth there or something? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. On the day of on the Arbor Day, there'll be potentially what we've done in the past, and I'll talk to various other people about this. Is
I'm sure Arbor Day is the 19th. I'm just sure of it. Is that what's your calendar say? Or that's a Saturday. I'm sure of that.
well, it can be. It's whatever
Okay.
we decide,
All right,
and
whatever you
the
want.
mayor proclaims
Okay.
it to be. So
Sure.
that's where we're going to put our attention next. Is the day. So.
Yeah, 18th is a Saturday,
Okay.
if
All
that
right.
matters.
Yeah, that's one of the options.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it's,
Okay, so we could have a booth there and do something.
mhm.
Yet to be determined.
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Greater Oregon City Watershed Council's, been represented before. We kind of put whoever's involved in natural resources, whether it's the Soil and Water District, if they came and donated some trees at one of our Arbor Days in the parking lot out here in front of City Hall once. All those ancillary activities are,
Okay.
potentially going to happen. But thanks.
Okay.
More details to follow.
Okay.
Any other questions about this? Okay, all right, next agenda item, staff member reports. And NRC member reports.
I have a question. I didn't hear anybody give us an update on applications. I believe Richard Craven did apply. I believe Shaw applied. She told me that today.
Right.
And I don't know who else.
I applied.
Brian did?
Yeah.
So that would put us back up to our quorum if these people got chosen.
Because since all the applications came in after the due date, we're gonna set a date certain so that it's fair for everybody out there who wants to. So we're gonna look into, for some reason, and I know some folks had indicated they applied online and for some reason they didn't come through. So we're gonna try and search for those.
Yeah.
And
There's been a bit of a technical glitch, but
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah, I believe Shaw, Richard,
You,
and I all applied online, so.
okay.
so Shaw's come through today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she scanned hers and sent it to Nancy Hyde. So
Okay.
that one came
so
through.
the procedure that
Mhm.
our mayor here established was that this committee interviews the applicants.
Right.
Now, by the way, why didn't we do that with you?
The mayor appointed him.
Why?
Why didn't we interview you? That was your.
That's a fair question. I've been
Yes.
appointed to two committees.
Well, we like you, but
Well, you interviewed me.
oh,
Parks and Recreation did not. But they put a motion forward to
Oh.
have me put on. So I think you'll have to ask staff that question. But those were for open seats, and these are open
Okay.
seats.
so would we expect to interview them next month? Maybe. I'm just
Yeah.
talking concept.
No, probably
All
not.
right, I mean, I like the idea
I
of
think
interviewing people.
the indication is there to give other people a chance to apply.
We're going to renotice it, set a date certain, because these things keep trickling in, and so
Okay.
we're going to say, okay, put it out there again by
All right.
X date, and
Yeah,
then
you
so it's
just-
going to take us a little
Okay.
bit.
I believe you just put it online in the last week or so.
I think it just popped up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I
Okay.
waited for that to happen and put in my application. So.
We have
We're
an
going to talk with the new mayor on the process that he's going to want to go through. If he's going to continue what Mayor Neely used to do in terms of bringing applicants to the committees to interview with recommendations, or if we're going to go back to how Mayor Norris used to do it in terms of she would interview with a member of the committee and staff and make a decision. So we're going to have that discussion and
Okay.
figure it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Sure.
Thanks. No, I'm clear.
Member reports. Would you like to share
Right.
anything with us?
This is my first meeting. It's exciting to me. I've also got onto the Parks and Recreation Committee. It does seem to me that there are areas of interest, there are common interests that would require more than one committee making comments and so forth. I am also on the board of the Great Oregon City Watershed Council. So it fits my long-term interest, I guess I would say. First degree was in biology at Portland State. Went to North Carolina State for graduate work in statistics, but that was been applied always to natural resources. And I'm still a professional statistician. So it's the professional interest of mine, but it's also a semi-recreational interest of mine.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I have to say that we discussed and put forward in our report to the City Council that we should have a better liaison with Parks and Rec, because we do have a lot of
Yes.
mutual interests that we should be talking back and forth about more than we are. And so when we heard Doug was going to be on both, we're going, oh, thank you, Doug.
Yep. That's a good thing.
Because that's one of the ideas that we had, is that someone from here should be on there and someone from there should be on here. And so it's been accomplished, and that's a great thing. So,
Check that one off.
yeah, but yeah, that's something that will help us out in the future for getting things, concrete proposals from both committees together, to possibly to the City Council. And the more we can interface, the better. And the other committee, the Parks Committee, agreed that's a great idea, but implementing that is more than just thinking it's a great idea. So hopefully we will have an active interface with them starting this year. Okay.
Good. All right. And I have nothing to report to the committee, but welcome. Glad you're
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
I would like to add one thing real
Tony?
quick. As obviously we have 3 new elected officials, a new mayor, 2 new city commissioners. One of the things we were asked as staff was to look at all of the committees that exist, from Planning Commission to Citizen Involvement Committee to Historic Review Board to Natural Resources Committee to Library Board, PRAC. And one of the observations that was brought forward was that they're all set up differently. Some are set by resolution, some are set by ordinance, some have never been adopted officially to begin with. Some have their bylaws in the code, some have nothing in the code, just create bylaws. And so we've been tasked with trying to get our arms around that. And so, and one of the things, when looking at, so there's probably going to be some changes to the Natural Resource Committee just to make it more clear as to what the role is. Because right now it is codified, so it was adopted by ordinance. It's in Chapter 2 of our code. But I think we've done quite a bit of work. You guys and Pete have done a tremendous amount of work on trying to identify what the role is, what your objectives are, what your goals are. Because I think we all struggled with the way that ordinance was written. The duties were extremely large, and so I think there's a desire to try to narrow that down a little bit, to provide more interaction and guidance from the city commission to the committees and from the committees back to the city commission, without these very open-ended non-direction, which I think we've struggled with for some of the committees. So just to let you know that's going to be going on. I think there was an initial request to start looking at how these committees were formed, what their structure is, who has bylaws, who doesn't have bylaws, and then try to figure out how do we standardize this a little bit more.
Well,
Yeah,
you'll be welcome to come give us some progress reports along the way, too.
And I certainly imagine that it's going to be engaging with you to come up with that recommendation.
Good.
And I would, my first inkling is that that I kind of build off of kind of all the work that you guys have done over the last year to kind of define what are our goals and objectives, what are our roles, and then kind of transfer that into some type of a governing ordinance model. Because I think one of the things, some of the committees have bylaws, some of them don't. And when we were looking, it's actually it's extremely unusual to have committees set up by the city that then make their own bylaws. And so when we start looking at other models, it doesn't exist. And so there's a desire to kind of roll those bylaws, the parts of them that are necessary, into the implementing ordinance so that it's clear as to what the roles are, what the responsibilities are, how we deal with, whatever comes up. Each street, obviously, one isn't going to be a one size fits all because we all have different roles on these committees and responsibilities. But like I said, to try and standardize it and provide a little more clarity from the commission as to what these instruments of the city should be doing, which hopefully will make it easier for everybody.
I'm going to say that I don't know the specific reasons why we got attached to planning, other than might be in terms of as you develop codes and so forth. When I think of natural resources and impacts of development and natural resources, of course, there are things that go through the planning process, and I understand that. But when I think about it, probably in terms of natural resources that the city actually manages, they're either under parks or they're under public works. They're not under planning. And so there might be some thought as to whether you're the appropriate department or not. I think that's worthy of discussion in the process. Because it seems to me that this group would be interested in being where not the planning is, but where, planning is important, but where in fact there are natural resources that the city manages and so forth. And I'm not sure that's you. I think in terms of maybe at points where you're looking at code modifications and so forth, and those can come in for consideration and discussion at this body, but I don't know if you're necessarily the best department. I'm not insulting you or anything,
Well,
but
that's no
I think
offense
that's been
taken.
something we've struggled with, is how do I, it's hard for me to say, let's go do this project on a creek or a stormwater facility. I've got to go back to John Lewis and Public Works, or I've got to get Scott Archer on board to bring them along, because you're correct. I don't have the responsibility of managing public lands.
Yeah, and that issue has come up in our discussions in the past. And another thing is our bylaws, as they stand, say that we need to liaison with PRAC, and they don't have a comparable requirement, but they see the need for it. So that's another thing that needs to be ironed out and codified correctly, so that just having Doug on both bodies is going to help a lot for the time being. But whether or not that needs to be codified in the future is another question.
Well, it looks like we just found a future agenda item.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Has anyone spoken to John Lewis? I mean, since we're talking concept here, I mean, well, so much of what he does is land on the land with for his staff people. It does seem like, I don't know, he wants another advisory committee. What's he got?
That may be
Traffic
true,
safety
too.
right now? He's got traffic safety right now, doesn't he? Isn't that his main advisory body?
Traffic Advisory Committee.
Traffic advisory.
Yeah.
But
He doesn't have a sewer advisory committee.
Not yet.
There's no Public Facilities Advisory Committee.
But you folks don't have the implementing side. You have the requirement and planning side, and he has the implementing side, which is an interesting thought.
And there may be some roles for this committee for
Yeah.
when codes get revised, to make some recommendations, but
Yeah.
that wouldn't necessarily require us to be under planning.
And it's
Right.
not something we do
Yeah.
regularly. I mean,
Right.
we update the codes every 3-4 years.
Although I've seen you out there planting trees, Tony.
Of course. I think the Friends of Trees thing is a great option. Yeah. So-
Well, on that note, I think we've hit the end of our meeting tonight.
I think we
So,
have too.
all right, I'm
Very
going to call
good
it
meeting.
adjourned.
Good meeting.
Great.
Good
Thanks.
meeting.
Thank you.
Congratulations.